Good morning. And we are going to go live with the next workshop shortly. I thought I would come in a minute earlier to be able to make sure that the live stream is working. So if you are joining the replay, I would love you to type in #replay and let me know where you are watching from. If you are joining me in the Zoom room, as always, let us know where you are calling in from as well. And if you're watching the live stream, which I'm just going to check to make sure that we are live in the group, then let me know where you're calling from as well. It's always good to find out. We've had people from all over the world, all different time zones, which is just fantastic. Terrific. All righty. So we've covered a lot already, haven't we, over the last 2 days? And we are up to day 2 of our 9-day challenge, which is how to go from invisible to influential trusted authority with a podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start today's topic, which is another one of my favorites. So I've got lots of favorite topics, especially when it comes to podcasting and creating a podcast that will enable you to nurture listeners into leads from your very first episode, while also build, this is so important, your reach, your visibility with your ideal client, along with your reputation as a trusted authority and your revenue from your very first episode. So I am just going and finding, here it is there, today's slides, and we will dive straight in. Terrific. So yes, and hey, Laurie, good to see you here again today. So this is day 3, how to go from invisible to influential trusted authority with a podcast, even if you are in a crowded marketplace. Now, this is specific. If you're a coach or a consultant, you have probably got many other coaches and consultants who are operating in your space. But one of the things that I have said for many years, and many other people do have as well, and it's true, and it's just a reminder that whilst there are many other people in your industry that are offering similar services to you, there is so much business out there in the world. And so you need to look at what we're doing today and throughout this whole 9-day workshops and challenge. When you're thinking about a podcast, there are hundreds and thousands of podcasts that are speaking about a similar topic to a similar client as you. But when you go through the steps that I have showed in day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and really start to get clear on these things, really begin to implement these within your business, you will carve out a niche, a lucrative niche that resonates, and who resonates, I should say, because your niche is your ideal client. And so there is much business out there in the world to be done. And you've just got to take the time to be able to understand, who is my ideal client? How am I unique? How am I uncopyable? And put that all together in your offerings, in your brand, in your message. And when you do, you will not leave tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table, but rather you'll be able to nurture and build long-term client relationships that leads to profitable and sustainable business growth. And that is today's topic. We are going to dive in. Now, if we haven't had an opportunity to meet before, hi, I'm Anne-Marie Cross. My background is in personal branding, and now I also include the personal branding, the messaging, positioning with business and podcast strategy. I'm an award-winning podcast host and recognized as one of the top 20 business coaches in Melbourne, although I do have awesome clients from all over the world. And where I really like to really plant my flag, so to speak, is supporting multi-passionate, the multi-passionate coaches and consultants who struggle to define their one thing, because that is me. We also struggle to focus on that one thing. That is me too, because many of us, we're either explorer archetypes who love to try out new things, learning all of the time, pioneer, the explorer is just that. We're pioneering the way. And hence, you are a change maker in your industry. The thing that you are bringing to life, and for many of you, you're in the process of birthing that, if you will, getting out of your head, getting it out of your muscle, and actually documenting it, systematizing it so that you can show others a way forward. And for many of you, you are challenging the status quo of your industry. You're doing things differently. And as I mentioned in one of my podcast and much of the content that I share now, is that if you're still sharing the same message that you were sharing 2 years ago, before all of the last 2 years have happened, then I encourage you to dive a little bit deeper. Your message has to evolve, and that is because your ideal client has different challenges, or there are more pressing challenges in their in their immediate now and in the future. And so if your message is still speaking to who they were 2 years ago, it needs to evolve. So I'm glad that you're going through this process with me over these next, we've already gone through 2 days. This is the third day, but so important, because you know that you have been put on this planet to make a difference, a much bigger impact. Yet many of you feel unseen, you are unheard. And so I'll be able to support you. This is what I do. This is my gig. Help you go from invisible to influential, trusted authority. The choice versus just a choice with your ideal client when you're leveraging a podcast. So there's things that need to be in place just to go from invisible to be seen, but to be seen and then to be trusted as that influential, trusted authority. There are things that need to be in place. And so this is what I'm focusing on. We're just scratching the surface, but of course the programs and how I might support you is to dive deep and put this into place for you. So how do you get the best out of the 9 days? Well, you show up, whether live or the recordings, and you just start to work through the content that we share. And where do you need more support? What do you need to focus on? Where are you stuck? What is keeping you stuck? And so if you're not yet accessing the workbook, go ahead and do that. The action guide has got specific areas which you can then document. I call that layered learning. And as you will see from our ahas that was shared yesterday, there are some of you that are going through the workshops twice, because they said the information is that good. And I call that layered learning, because once you understand things from a different perspective, the next time you hear it or you hear something else, it adds even more value, because you now know something that you didn't know yesterday. And this new information or the same information is going to land differently. It's going to have a different thought process, because you've started to create those neural pathways that you can have a deeper understanding. And so, for some of you, go through these workshops 2, 3, 4, 5 times, but access the workbook. There's also a calendar and an agenda there. And also there is a $10,000 scholarship up as a prize for those of you who are doing all of the things that will get you in the running. And I'll share a little bit more about that in a moment. Act as if you've paid for this event. As I mentioned in workshop 1 and 2, and I'm going to repeat today, if this is the first time you're joining me on one of these workshops, so many people have said to me over the years, Anne-Marie, the things that you put in your challenge, I've learned more and had more ahas than I have if I've invested thousands of dollars in an expert coach. When I think about what I'm sharing with you today, I have not just learned this from someone else. And I'm saying this because for you, you have not learned what you now know just because you've done a course, you've done a certification, you know new modalities. you are using and seeing those modalities through the lens of the journey that you have walked. And the thing that we're going to talk about today is how do you capture that in a very unique and uncopyable way so that you're not just regurgitating the same old that everyone else is putting out there and just putting your own little spin on it. This is the stuff that you have worked through, you have journeyed through, you have fought through, and now you have a roadmap. Now you have a step-by-step system and process and techniques and tools to be able to support your clients be able to go through that far quicker than you do. I mean, let's face it, we have walked the journey, some of us 10 years, 15 years, 20 plus years. Our clients don't have 20 plus years to be able to go through what we have gone through. And we're here to show them how to do that. Leave any self-doubt behind. As I said, all of the things that I just mentioned to you, imposter syndrome, comparison syndrome, being afraid to share your voice, all of those things disappear because you realize that what you are sharing is absolutely you. You've done the hard yards, you've had the successes because you're living and breathing, and you've got a far better approach now than what you were, say, 10, 20 years ago. And now you have that hope and possibility and just the knowledge and experience to be able to lead people through that. So leave self-doubt behind, leverage your workbook. I don't know about you. I love all my digital tools and technology, my toys, but I also love pen and paper as well. Get some kinesthetic motions going. You know, when you start to take action and writing things down, you're getting things in your hand and your head and your heart. And that just, again, layers that learning. Write down your top questions. Happy to answer those before we finish up today's workshop. And as always, be inspired, because if you're inspired, then that's going to empower you, and then you're going to go forth and inspire and empower others. If you haven't got the workbook, there's the link, industrythoughtleaderacademy.com, invisible to influential, and you can grab that. All right, who loves prizes? The scholarship to my invisible to influential trusted authority with a podcast, a 12-month acceleration program valued at $10,000. I'm so excited about this program. I don't want to go too in depth about it, but over the last several years, I've been putting together different programs and getting things out of my own head. I mean, I am my own client. And so now I know, because I was a coach who struggled with how am I going to teach all of these things to my clients who want to have a podcast and who want to go from invisible to influential trusted authority. So it's taken, not that it needs to take you, because remember, I've gone through the journey before you and mapped out the steps that you need to take. What did I take? The steps that I take, sure, it took me many more years. It doesn't have to take you those many years. And I've been able to map that out. And now I've put all of those pieces together in 90-day sprints. And there's 4 sprints, which I'll share a little bit more later today, because, you know, one of you is going to win that. And so excited to be able to offer this. So you guys are the first people to hear this. I'm so excited about this. Anyway, how to get in the winning. Are you sharing your ahas in our Podcasting with Purpose community to be in the running? Let's recap what we have gone through. Again, I want to layer the learning, remind you of what we have been doing for the things that are important if you want to go from invisible, underpaid coach and consultant to highly paid, sought after, trusted authority with a podcast, because that's something else as well, isn't it? I can share all of the things, my strategies, my tactics, the steps that I took, but it also requires a mindset, doesn't it? A mindset shift that will enable you to get paid what you're worth. So 3 indicators that we spoke about on day 1. If you haven't watched day 1, the recording, the replay is here in the community. Go and watch that so that you're all caught up. But these 3 indicators indicate that you're not quite ready to launch a podcast yet. And you want to make sure that they're in place. Because one thing I know to be true as well, for many of you who are coaches and consultants, you've thought that a podcast was something, a tool that would enable you to amplify your message, which it will. But if your message is not already working, you want to focus on that first so that your message lands. It makes a difference. It has people, your ideal client, think, oh, who is this person? And then they start to listen to an episode and then another episode and another episode. And before long, they've subscribed, they've binge listened, they're now to every show, and they're now stalking you across every social media platform. And they cannot get enough of the content that you share because you know who your ideal client is. You can read their mind, and in a nice way, of course, because you know exactly what it is that they need to do, and you're sharing that on your podcast. But you don't want to have a podcast that ends up not generating the results. You put all of this hard time and energy into creating it and launching it. You want it to work, and you don't only want to have a podcast that is one of, hundreds of thousands. You want to be the trusted authority, the podcast that's binge worthy, that attracts your ideal clients. That's what this is all about, this 9-day challenge, and how I can support you. 4 podcasting mistruths. You need to know what they are. 7 common podcasting mistakes. By the way, I've done all of these things. So I am, what would you say? I have an MBA in all of these things. So I hope that you don't get an MBA in all of these things, but rather the things, the strategies, the foundations that have to be in place to be able to support you in going from invisible to influential. We talked about the definition of distinguishable, uncopyable, and irresistible. One thing I often hear clients say to me is, I don't want to get up on a pedestal and tell everybody how good I am. I'm better than everyone else, and, dominate the industry and all of that kind of stuff. It feels icky. And I say, good, because you don't need to be. What you're doing through all of the things that I'm sharing is you're not saying that you're better than everyone else. That's arrogant, isn't it? And we're not arrogant. Rather, you are saying, because it's true, that you're better placed to support your clients because you know who they are, you've been there yourself, or aspects of the journey, and you've now got a solution, steps to be able to support them in navigating through that far quicker, with far less heartache, far less money as well, often when they invest in you, rather than spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands and 20 plus years to get through what it is. So you're not better than everyone else. You're not saying that. You're just better placed to be able to support your clients. We talked about the podcast positioning quadrant, be the trusted authority. And we talked about that in day 1. If you want to go back and re-listen to that, or listen to it if you haven't already. And then, of course, we're now going through the distinction model. And in day 1, I introduced what that was. And then in day 2, we dove a little bit deeper into the message component. And we spoke specifically about how can you transform your expertise from a want into a need. Ladies, when we see a handbag or shoes and we want them, but you know what? We will do everything. And I actually need those because I've got new clients that I want to really attract. And, I just feel better. And that's what you want to have when your clients start to hear about how you can support them. They go, I just don't want this. I actually need this program. I need you. To be able to support me in going from where I want to where I am now to where I want to be, and from an overwhelming number of choices to becoming the only choice. That's so important, that you are the only person that any of your ideal clients can see possibly to support them through that. While, of course, having a binge-worthy podcast that positions you as that trusted authority that your ideal client wants to work with. We spoke about authenticity. It's not a buzzword. It's paramount. It is so paramount. And I spoke about what authenticity means. We talked about less is more. So important. Less is more. Do not overwhelm with your message. Do not underwhelm with your message. Unlearn industry jargon and terminologies. Learn through the lens of your ideal client, the language that they are speaking, and integrate that into your content, because you could have the solution, in fact, the only solution that's really going to help clients. But in the way in which you're expressing that, the way in which you're sharing that message, if that's not resonating, if your ideal clients can't see that, they're never going to say, hey, I think we need to chat. That's why it's so important to understand, the language, the nuances that our ideal clients are using and what they're thinking, because then we can speak into that. It's like building rapport. You would know that. You're a coach. And so you need to build that rapport and that trust before you're really able to dive a little bit deeper with your client and really see what is it that's stopping them, and then have conversations around that to shift their mindset, their thinking, and help them see things from a different way. So for many of you who are coaches and you think, I just want to coach, all this marketing stuff that I have to do that gets in the way from me coaching. I get it. But guess what? See it through the lens of your coaching clients, actually. They just don't know it yet, because you're sharing a message that is sharing why you, why now, and when you those things, and what solution can you offer them, so that they get excited, far more excited right in that process, because you've shown that promise of value and that promise of expectation. Your future pacing, that's another jargon, but I can use that jargon because you are coaches and consultants. You know what I mean? Your future pacing through the message that you're sharing, but through the lens of what your ideal client understands. Then we talked about the distinction model, the message, your umbrella statement, and your invisible thread, and your signature sayings and slogans. Go back to day 2 if you want to find out more of those. So important, layered learning, because we are going to layer in a moment, day 3. So here are some ahas, which I love. Laurie said, less is more. I got you, girlfriend. That is so me. We want to jam pack everything from the last 20 odd years into, like a one-day workshop for our clients, because we need to download everything. But our ideal clients, they had you, what is that saying? You had me at hello. Your opening statement, they're probably already doing some, oh my goodness. And then you're jam packing thing after thing after thing after thing. So a huge reminder for us. So looking at my 5-step signature program and seeing that I'm literally trying to teach everything. Also checking on my industry jargon is a good reminder. Absolutely. Nirja, my aha is less is more. There's another one. I'm passionate about what I do, and it's important to remember not to overwhelm people who are listening. Another one is something I do when working with clients is speak their language and not industry jargon. Thank you. Yep, absolutely. Karen says, my aha was solidifying what I've been working on, which is using the words that my ICA uses, I call it your lucrative niche, not mine, so that I can connect better. Also using my story and what sets me apart from others. Absolutely. And we're going to take that to the next level today with what we're speaking about in today's workshop. And then Karen said, I'm listening for the second time. So much good training. Your layer learning, which is wonderful. And Anne says, my aha today was to simplify the message, learning signature sayings and slogans that can become branded hashtags. Absolutely. It's almost like, well, it is not almost like, it is like, and it is. When you continue to repeat your lessons and have these branded hashtags, what's going to stick in people's minds is these branded hashtags, and they're immediately going to think that's what Anne says, whatever it might be. So one of mine's podcasting with purpose, because it has to be intentional, all of the steps in place if I want to go from invisible to influential, trusted authority. And I replied to Anne, I said, absolutely a great aha. Simplifying the message is key. Less is more, especially getting clear on the language our ideal client uses and the lens through which they see their issue. Once we understand that, we can bridge the gap to where they are, to where they want to be, through the knowledge and the solutions we share, that they understand that we get them, we understand them, and then we're able to nurture them along the customer journey for them to then realize, there's nobody else, nobody better, no one else that I would want to work with than Anne, then Nirja, then Laurie, then Karen, and all of you who are watching the replay and the live stream. All righty, we're going to layer. Who's ready for some layered learning? Put a yes in the comment here in Zoom. I've got to remember to do all of that, kind of engage with you. I'm really sorry. When I get on my microphone, I just can't help but share. So anyway, so yeah, put a yes, put a I'm ready, and let's dive in. Today, we are going to unpack methodologies. And the two things that I want to talk about today, well, actually, we're going to talk about your signature system, because that is really important. Then there's 7 core principles, which layer then on top of that. But today, we're going to talk about IP and signature system, show you some examples, because I think examples work really well as you start to think about, what is my signature system? So that you're not regurgitating what you've learned from someone else and kind of putting your spin on it. You're actually creating a unique step-by-step signature system that is something that is very unique to you. So this is what typically happens when we start our business. And for many coaches, and sometimes even consultants, but particularly coaches, who they are open for business, they're really excited, they've got their new certification, they've got their certificate, it's hanging on the wall, because my goodness, we spent many, many hours and months and sometimes years, excuse me, studying for that piece of paper, and now being able to open our doors to be able to support clients. We cannot help but get excited about the opportunities. So what do? We take every opportunity to promote our business. We go to many events. For some of you, it's like, what's this I'm seeing over the last 2 years? I know for some of us, we are getting back into meeting face-to-face again, but that's typically how we've grown businesses, haven't we? We said, go to every networking event, make as many connections as you can. Over the last 2 years, it's looked a little bit differently, hasn't it? We've seen many more faces across our screen on Zoom. But what's ended up happening, I don't know about you, but this has led to Zoom fatigue. And did you know that there's actually articles now? Zoom fatigue is a thing. And I just did a little bit of a Google search, as you do, to find that there's a Harvard study which identified 4 different things about what causes Zoom fatigue. Excessive amounts of close-up eye contact is highly intensive. For those of us who are introverts, even though we are, and I've noticed this myself, even though we aren't physically with people, that strain from the eyes can really drain our energy as well. So we need to monitor to that. But the one that I wanted to share, so there was seeing yourself during video calls. This is another reason. Video chats dramatically reduce our mobility. And then this is the one that I wanted to share with you. Cognitive load is much higher in video chats. Neuroscience, and this is going to lead me to, why am I sharing this? Because this is something that's really good with audio podcasts. Neuroscience have showed that it takes far more energy to watch a video than it is to hear someone, which is why I think many videographers and video marketing specialists say, keep your videos short and concise, because people only have, so much of an attention span. And neuroscience has showed that one of the reasons is that they can get far more fatigued through watching. It's just, what happens in the brain. But with audio, it's less so. And there are some figures around that. I don't have access to that. I've got it documented somewhere around, because I wanted to find out. I realized when I started doing video interviews rather than audio, why am I feeling so exhausted? And doing some further studies, neuroscience proved that audio only, it requires less brain energy, if you will. There's a terminology for that. I'm not a neuroscience scientist by any means, but so that's great when it comes to audio podcasting, and why we can spend more time with our clients, ideal clients and community, because they're able to listen to us longer and go on a walk while they're listening to us. I've even had people said that they've laughed out loud in the middle of a train, and then they realize, where they are. Or a client who was in the gym listening to an episode and had to stop on the treadmill and go running to the toilet because the conversation was just so deep and meaningful. She said it just she just had to burst out crying. She got her in the feels, so to speak. And that's the kind of thing that can happen with a podcast, which is wonderful. Anywho, getting back to what we're talking about today. So what else we do? We hand out our business cards wherever we go. Now we're connecting online, aren't we? The digital version of our business cards. We get every opportunity that we can to say, yes, I will speak about my business. Yes, I will go on podcast interviews. Yes, I will speak on webinars. Yes, I will go to the online Zoom connection meetings, doing all of the things, especially if we're able to speak about our business. And what happens is then you're networking with someone. You then maybe meet for one-to-one coffee chats, which we're allowed to do now, or virtual chats, which is wonderful. You're getting an opportunity to speak a little bit more in depth about who that person is, share a little bit more about what you do. And maybe you realize through that conversation, and she realizes or he realizes, she or he is actually your ideal client. So what do? Well, you invite her into a discovery call, which is getting to know her even better, seeing where the gaps are in her business, considering whether or not you can support her, and then obviously sharing more about what is possible if she works with you, showcasing the promise of value and promise of expectation. You know how you can support her. She's a great fit. You cannot wait to help her go from where she is stuck to achieving her goals. But guess what? She says no. She's not ready, or for whatever reason, she's not moving forward. And so what happens is this can often become a repetitive cycle, can't it? So more meetings, more thises, more that's, more online Zooms, more, to the point where we get absolutely exhausted. You're left frustrated and uncertain, because as coaches, often we're so connected, deeply connected to the work we do, because it's not just work that we do, it's who we are, isn't it? So when we get a no, we can often take it personally. And what ends up happening is it feeds that belief that you're not good enough, that your program's not good enough and not what they're looking for. So what you end up doing is probably more courses and more thises and the more that's, because you just don't want to get that no again, because you're taking it personally. But don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. I want to share with you a colleague's experience. This was many years ago in the career industry, and so was he. And he was just starting out his business. He'd done all of those things that I had just walked through with you. And one of his colleagues, or actually wasn't a colleague, it was his next door neighbor, said, well, just you pretend that I'm one of your ideal clients, go through the process, share what you normally, say to them, and I'll give you some honest feedback. How's that? And so that's what my colleague did. He went through and asked some questions and then shared how he could work with that potential client who was his neighbor. And after finishing, the neighbor said, you know what, mate? He said, why should I hire you to have a chat with me? Yeah, you're a coach and you're going to have a conversation and you're going to ask me really good questions. And, it's so many meetings and we're going to have a chat. Why should I pay for that when I could have a chat to you now, or I could chat to my mate down the road, or whatever it is? And so what was really sad about that was that the way in which my client, wasn't a client, it was a colleague, was speaking about how he could support was just not seen as valuable, and having a chat. And guess what? Having a chat, you could ask a question as a coach, because you're trained to do that, or a consultant to direct the attention of your ideal client to an area where they're struggling, which could immediately change everything else. So that one conversation could be the difference between them achieving what they wanted and what they've been struggling to achieve or not. We know the value in a conversation. We know the value, don't we, in the pregnant pause, that look, that really? Tell me more about that. We know the power behind that. But guess what? Our ideal clients don't know that. So having a chat and saying, we're just going to have some conversations and I'm going to ask you some powerful questions. Yeah, you will. But at the moment, they're just not seeing it as how powerful it can be. And I'm sure you've also heard about the importance of talking about not just features, how many coaching sessions, what the workbooks that you include. Those are all very important and valuable. And we taught and told, share the benefits, the outcomes. That's all really important. But there's more. There's a better way. And that's what I want to talk about today, your IP and your signature system. So let's dive in. What is IP? You know that it stands for intellectual property. It's stuff that you have created and have come up with. And I call it your signature system. So your ideal client is looking for a solution that can support them. And that is what your signature system can support you in doing for them. So your signature system is really just, keeping it simple, a step-by-step pathway that can take your client through, or that you take your client through, in order to take them from, point A to point G, or whatever point that you're working in, from stuck to unstoppable, for a want of another word, through the different steps. And for those of you who have worked with me before, you know that I love odd numbers. So 3 steps, a little bit too quickly, unless of course you're doing a lasered program, and therefore you're just working through those 3 steps because you know your clients are going to get some awesome things and results in those 3 steps. But 5 steps is good, 7 steps probably, but I always like to keep things to 5, between 5 to 7, but I just love 5. In between 3 and 7, let's just go with 5. So why is a signature system so important? You really can rise quickly to specialist status in the eyes of your ideal client. An influential trusted authority, the choice versus just a choice, with your unique, proven, profitable, and repeatable, that's important, signature system with those steps, those 5 steps. And if my ideal client or my colleague had have shared that, and through the lens of the steps that they would take through and share, and I'm going to give you some examples about that in a moment, and how we bring that to life, how it can support us in our conversations, our sales conversations, our discovery sessions. The feedback that he got from his neighbor would have been far different, because it would have seeded all of the things. Let's bring in what we spoke about in day 2 and day 1. He would have, and I love this term, seed and lead. You seed information, you seed expertise, you seed in where your ideal clients are struggling with and what's possible. And then you lead them along the journey by sharing why are some of the reasons why they're stuck? Why are some of these steps so important? Why are they in a sequence? What is this program that you can support them with? That creates intrigue. That creates a compelling sense of, oh my goodness, I want that. When can we get started? And that's the difference in between having a conversation as a coach with a client and just saying, well, I'm just going to have some conversations. I'm going to ask you some really good questions, to putting it into some real tangible, compelling results, but through the lens of that signature system. Where do you begin? Where do you even begin to start putting these things together? Well, remember what we spoke about yesterday, day 2, the invisible thread. This is where you start, because your markers and your milestones, which are the invisible thread, can also leave clues for you as to where your steps are, along with the teachings to help your clients. So your invisible thread is where you want to spend a little bit of time and start to unpack. That's why yesterday I said, start to document what are some of your markers and milestones. And then now we're going to go back. We're going to do another sweep over those markers and milestones, and then see what of those are so significant with my ideal clients. They're going to resonate when I share them in my story. And what are the teachings? What are the steps that I can bring? What are the methodologies and the techniques and the tools that I've learned as a coach that I can put into that teaching and to help them shift through that? This is where we start to unpack and put that all together. I want to give you some examples because I promised that I would do that. In my resume days as a career coach, I came up with a really simple signature system. I even trademarked it. There was another one I trademarked and I couldn't find the diagram, but this is before I learned the steps that, keep the steps succinct. I had a 15-step what was it? Finding your purposeful career. And there was, a model that I created, and each step led them on the journey to going from hating a job to finding their purposeful career, pursuing your passion. I could find the little logo that I had, but I couldn't find the model. But I got that trademark too. Not saying that you need to trademark yours, although having said that, for some of you, you've got the ability to not only create this incredible signature system and signature programs, you've got other coaches who will love your system and program so much, you can certify, just putting it out there, certify them in your signature system so that they can go out and teach others and coach others using your model. That's a whole other income stream that is very exciting. And that's what I was going to do with my purposeful careers model till I got bored, as the explorer does, and changed my focus. I have got so many programs sitting in boxes and things like that, which people could take and get certified in and run with. But anyway, so this was the resume pyramid, and each letter stood for a process. Needed to do your research first. I mean, how on earth can you put together a document, a marketing document that positions you as the ideal employee if you don't know the company, the company or the role that they're looking to fill, their objectives, the outcomes that they want, the challenges that they're going, through. And then how can you not understand how best to position your resume if you don't do research on you and what your experience? And then the expand was what are the challenges that you've overcome? How did you address that challenge? What steps did you put into place, you or your team? How did you overcome some of those challenges? What were the successes? Then the script was writing that all out, starting to document. What's the best resume format? Are you returning to the workforce, or are you a graduate and so don't have much experience? But how can you showcase your projects in your university studies in the best possible way? That was the scripting. The underpinning was highlighting all of those sharp, succinct bullet points of successes materialize. Hey, I was just new to the game, so when I read back to some of these things, I think, my goodness, putting it all together, giving it a final polish, and then edit was so important. You'd be surprised at the number of mistakes that that in our industry we would often have memes and things like that would come across, and the typing errors and resumes would often have recruiters laugh and key decision makers laugh too. But anyway, this was something that I created, and I did workshops about that. I had a course about that. This was the process that I did with each and every client. So sometimes it would take me days to write a resume, especially if you get the 32-page document that you've got to, put together in a 3, here in Australia, we can have a little bit more leeway with number of pages. But I know in the US, it had to be sharp and succinct at that time. So this was the resume pyramid. And as I said, I got that trademarked. I was so proud of it. So now if I think about the business strategist part of it, was the core foundations. And I'm actually walking you through that in this particular challenge, or part of that. We spoke about your lucrative niche. Who is your ideal client? If you don't understand your ideal client and the lens through which they look so that you can position your message through that, if you don't understand your signature brand, what makes you unique, your mannerisms, what brand archetype are you, all of those different things. Again, looking through the lens of your lucrative niche. So you can see, if you don't know who your ideal client is, because there's a sequence to this. You've got to understand your niche, because you can work on your brand. You can even put together a signature system that just rocks. But if it's not tied to the needs and the desires and the challenges, and you're not putting it through in a language that your ideal client will understand, there's no point. They're just not going to invest, because they don't realize that you have the solution for them. So this is the core business foundation, the steps that I take clients through to help them go from invisible to influential, trusted authority, your signature programs. We're going to talk a little bit, I believe, tomorrow. We may touch on that tomorrow, I believe. Yes. And then your digital asset. And so, this is so very important. Each of these is a sequence that builds on one another. And as I said, you're kind of walking through that at the moment. And this needs to be in place first before you launch a podcast. If you want to be the podcast your ideal client listens to, if you want your podcast to be one of the influential, or you seen as an influential, trusted authority in your industry. And remember, we're not focusing on numbers, because vanity numbers means nothing. Really, they don't. Because you could have 1 million, 2 million, 3 million downloads or listens, but if they're not your ideal client, they're never going to invest in your services, because there's just going to be a disconnection there. And so if you focus on speaking to that audience of 1 who becomes 2, who becomes 4, who becomes 8, and so on and so forth, you will find that your podcast will continue to build a community of your ideal clients who, when they're ready, they will take that next step. And so core business foundations, so very important. Message before microphone. End in mind before you even start recording. And then if you look at some of my signature systems and then the models that I teach, bringing and layering the podcast strategy over the top of your core business foundations to build your reach with your ideal client, to build your reputation as that trusted authority, an influential trusted authority, and your revenue as you nurture listeners into leads from your very first episode. It takes some more steps, some more systems. And so I have 3 core frameworks, if you will, or models that I use. There's the podcast profit formula, there's the formula, the framework, the funnel, the pipeline. And so I came up with some of these things as I was thinking about how can I teach this in a way that people will understand, but gives some strength to what I'm sharing. And I came up with this formula: S plus T plus U equals I to the power of 3. And I'll share what that is. Remember in workshop 1, I shared with you how I started Career Success Radio with a dear colleague of mine who was also in the career industry. And even though we built influence, even though we built impact over the 2 years that we produced that podcast, we struggled to generate income. And then I realized, when stepping back and learning all of the learnings, many of which I'm sharing with you, and I do share in all of my programs, because you need to be aware of it so that you don't make the same mistakes and take so much longer to get to the influential trusted authority. I realized that to have income, influence, impact, which is the I to the power of 3, you had to have strategy, which is the S. You then had to have a tactic. So your overall strategy is really the planning, the overall. The tactic is really a specific method that is going to support your strategy in working. And then the U is you. So strategy, the right strategy with the right tactic with you is going to generate influence, impact, and income. And I realized then that my colleague and I, we didn't really have a solid strategy with an end in mind. We didn't really have a tactic that would get people off the podcast and onto our list. In fact, we had no list building capacity whatsoever. No real way to capture those people, build relationships outside of that podcast to do that. And with the U, we had an understanding, of course, of our brand, absolutely. So we understood that. We knew exactly who we wanted to be, the message that we wanted to share, all of those things, but we didn't have the right strategy or the right tactic. You need to have all of those things in place. And then guess what the strategy is? The framework. All of those steps are important for your overall podcast: purpose, plan, produce, publish, promote, and then profit. So that framework works for your entire podcast strategy and as a whole. And then you can use that framework with each and every episode as well. What is the purpose of this episode? What is the end in mind? What's the action, the profit? What's the action that I want my clients to take after this episode? All right, now that I've got what this episode is going to be about and the outcome that I want from that. Now I need to plan it. Now I need to, get the topic and do all of the things to be able to get that content recorded. Then I need to produce it. Then I need to publish it. Then I need to promote it. And then you can profit from that. So the strategy and the framework was really important. What's the tactic? Well, the tactic is actually the 3-part podcast series, which came about from, remember the 3 episodes that I mentioned to you, Women in Leadership, the podcast I started to deal with my grief and loss after my worst business failure ever, which was actually the best thing that ever happened to me because I worked through those issues. I went through the process, in fact, hired the most expensive coach that I have ever invested in my entire life, because I knew that if I didn't work through that worst business failure ever, it would have the opportunity to keep me stuck. As a coach, I always have coaches to be able to support me. And I'm so glad I did, because as I said, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was able to go back and reflect through the learnings. I was able to go back and start looking at, well, what have I done? How can I look at my story and create some models around that, create some systems that excite me when I'm sharing it, because I'm teaching what I've learned through the steps I've taken. I'm sharing this because you could be thinking the same thing too. What are some of the systems and the steps that I can draw from the journey that I have walked? Yes, I was in a pit then. I felt that I was walking through a valley then, but guess what? You have walked through that valley so that you can walk alongside that ideal client who is in that valley now. You can show them don't go that way. This is the way we need to go. And you can use some of those tools and techniques that you've been taught, those modalities that will have them shift their thinking, that will know how to break state, that will know how to hold the space, as Laurie and I were talking about that yesterday. She could do a whole workshop on that, about that technique on how to hold the space with the partner you love, your spouse. So these are the things, when you put them together in systems, in a process, that when you start talking about that on your podcast and in the content that you share, and as you're sharing slides and things like that in presentations, your ideal client is going, man, I need to know more about that system. I need to know more about that steps. And of course, the pipeline is really when you implement your 3-part podcast series, which is there as that call to action. It actually adds value to the digital asset, that the core foundations that you've created, the quiz, it adds even more value. And that's what begins the process of your ideal client, not only being aware of you, but being aware of how you can support them. And you're walking alongside them, enabling them to have mini wins along the way, so that when they finish going through that series and they've continued to listen to episodes and see you online, and they go, you know what? I need to invest in myself, because I can't do this on my own. I've been trying too long, and I need to know what I don't know. I need to see what I don't see. And investing in you as a coach, as a mentor, as a consultant is the best step forward. And that's what happens when you take the time to create your signature system. All right, let's talk about Kashmir Modi. She went through the Core Business Foundations program with me a couple of years ago, and I checked in with her. She'd been doing incredible things, just a couple of months actually, and I said, Kashmir, I'd love to interview you and find out what's happening in your world. And so I've captured just a snippet of what she said, but I want you to have a look at this diagram here, which she now calls the Learning Essence Program Pathway. And she recognized that going through the process and understanding the steps that her clients were taking, and then having a look at what she was offering clients, she had a huge aha, and she realized that she was offering support to clients who are at the beginning of the journey and then at the end of their journey, and there was nothing in between. So she was leaving, dollars on the table, because she didn't have a sequence or a process program pathway that would support clients as they needed to up level, to upskill. What's next, Kashmira? And what's ended up happening through that whole process, because she didn't just do her signature system and signature program, she understood her lucrative niche. She then worked on her signature brand and tweaked that and really shaped it to speak through the lens of her ideal client. She then put together she solidified even further her signature system, her signature program, her digital asset. Well, guess what her digital asset is? This document, which is documenting her systems. And I tell you what, I was speaking to Laurie yesterday, it was hilarious because we laughed. I said, what do we often do when people are teaching and they flash up a quiz? Because I've got a handout version of my quizzes. What we do is we take a screenshot. Let's just say we do, don't we? This is what we do. And we try and make the picture large because we want to read what are the words in that particular, in that document. We want to find out what it is. We're intrigued. This is exactly the kind of thing that happens when Kashmira starts to share more about her programs. People message you, what are we doing? What's that? What are you doing? But anyway, this is what Kashmira, she said, previously in my business, she was hustling 80% of working hours. How many of us can relate with that? Marketing, putting out content, everything else was 20%. Working with clients. Today, now, because of what she's put into place in her core business foundations, she's hustling. She calls it hustling. Love that. 10% of the time and spending 90% of time creating value and serving clients. Isn't that what we all want to do as coaches and consultants? Have the marketing working for itself and you spending more time focusing on creating value and serving clients. And what's ended up happening, and this is the reason why, is because she's getting, and these are her words, more bulk projects. So not 1 or 2 short-term projects, but 6 months programs along with high-level clients and projects and opportunities. So no longer am I feeling depleted and exhausted trying to get clients. So once you understand, and you've got your teachings and you're sharing it in a way through different models and this beautiful blueprint. I mean, just how amazing is that? And then each thing that can really support clients, it immediately has you go from a nice to have to a I need this, and from a number of choices to being the only choice. And that's exactly what happened to Kashmira as well. So very, very excited for her. But that's the kind of thing that can happen when you focus on getting these core business foundations in place. That is why I harp on, and you'll hear me say again and again and again and again, message before, make a model of the microphone. You need to have these in place, especially if you're a coach or a consultant who wants to leverage your podcast as a way to generate leads, to build connections, a deeper connection, know, like, and trust with your ideal client. Position yourself, not that you're better than everyone else. Arrogance does just not come into our realm of understanding, is it? We're not better than everyone else, but we're better placed to support our ideal clients that we are at. And we can say that with confidence and a boldness, because you've been where your ideal client is, and you've got a way through your signature system, those particular steps, which is what we've talked about today. So let's recap. How not to leave tens of thousands, for some of you, hundreds of thousands, and even more on the table, because I've just seeded something to you that your signature system can become a certification program, so that not only are you helping your clients, but you're helping them, certified licensed coaches, to help other clients and other clients. So you're multiplying yourself and you're actually creating another income stream. But rather, you're nurturing and building long-term client relationships that lead to profitable and sustainable business growth. What is your signature system? It is a step-by-step pathway that you take your clients through to take them from stuck to unstoppable, kicking all of the goals. So that's what you really want to focus on. That's the next layer in the aspect of end in mind before you launch your podcast. Tomorrow, we're going to add even more on top of this, the power of momentum. And this is how to attract and generate a steady flow of your ideal client right to your door, so that you never have to chase leads again, and how you can leverage your podcast by nurturing listeners into leads from your very first episode. Now, for those of you who are thinking, Anne-Marie, I don't know if I can cram any more in. We're not actually cramming any more in. We're going to share some of the things that you want to have in place so that what's happening for Kashmira, I mean, Kashmira hasn't even put a podcast on yet. Wait till she starts to implement that. And I hear on the grapevine that she very well may now be ready to launch a podcast on top of that. Can you imagine the impact that she's going to make? So tomorrow we're going to dive a little bit deeper. We've already started to talk about some of those things. Everything is interconnected. There is no new things that I'm going to share, but rather layer even more learning on the things that we've covered already. But that's what we're going to cover tomorrow. The power of momentum. And so often as coaches, and I've done this so often, we start building the momentum and then I'm going to create a program that does this. I mean, when I go back and look at all of the different things that I've done over the years, I'm going to just say something that to show you that I really have been all over the place. In between moving from career coach to business coaching and now obviously podcast strategy, there was just a little stint in there that I completely left and went into psychotherapy, where I was using NLP, working for a naturopath clinic and wellness center. And I even did a certification course in helping people to give up smoking. I'm a little bit, I'm not embarrassed to say, because it was an incredible program, but I mean, how off topic that, I mean, God bless my husband. I bought, hundreds of these red hearts, the hand, what do you call it when you squeeze the stress balls? Because I was going to help people. I was going to use this new NLP tools that I use to help people give up smoking. And I mean, how off topic was that? It really, anyway. So I'm just sharing. I have an MBA in getting distracted and trying all of the things. But thank goodness, the worst business failure ever, because that was the kick in the pants that I needed to go get focused, Anne-Marie, and just focus on what it is that you do well. Alrighty, winning the ultimate prize. What's the time? Good. Top of the hour. Again, I think I've mentioned to you earlier, started to see it. I'm so excited about this. The Invisible to Influential Trusted Authority with a 12-month acceleration program. There are 4 stages. Each stage is a 90-day sprint. And I love these 90-day sprints because we're focused, we're taking action on the right steps, and we're moving through to get things into place. The first stage, the 90 days of Ignite Your Inner Champion. What is that? The Core Business Foundations. Let me just give you that hint. That is where we really dive deep into everything that we are talking about, or some of the things that we've touched upon. We help you really get clear on that distinction blueprint for you. Then once you've got that in place, you're clear about that, you're certain, you're confident, because it is who you are and what you are meant to be in this world as a change maker. We then layer a podcast strategy on top of that. We're able to accelerate your authority, and our 90-day sprint in stage 2 is idea to launch your podcast. Stage 3, because you've launched your podcast, now what? Does it stay in play? No, there's more to be done. We then build your legacy, momentum, and impact. We continue to build on that. Stage 4, continue to build legacy, scale up your influence and income with more, modules and mindset, all of those things which are very important. That is the prize that's up for grabs, $10,000 value. And if you want to find out more about how to get into that, Invisible to Influential, obviously our link will give you a little bit more to that. What do you need to do? Attend the days, watch the recordings, share your biggest aha. There's a link that's going to go up in the Podcasting with Purpose group that says workshop 3, what is your aha? There's a workshop 2 graphic there already. There's a workshop 1 graphic there already for the aha. Go and add your aha to that. And at the end of tomorrow's workshop, I am going to compile all of those. I'll see who of you have done a selfie during this challenge, and I'm going to put all of the names in a hat, and we'll be drawing out a winner, and I'll be announcing who that winner is on Friday.